Today, guys, we're gonna be watching Short Story. Come on, bro, we're gonna watch this. Mr. Clean.
I know everyone always says their marriage didn't start out this bad, but I promise you in my case it's completely true. I met my husband when I was in my early 20s, and we immediately fell in love. Our relationship moved quickly after that, and it wasn't long before we got married and settled down. I never saw any worrying signs. Everything was so normal and cliche. We had the house with the white picket fence. My husband was a lawyer and made a very steady income. There weren't any problems at all back then. A few years into our marriage, we had a son, and that only made things better. He was our pride and joy, and the three of us all got along great. Again, we were just a normal, happy family. Then everything started to change. Over the years, my husband became different. He started acting controlling and angry all the time. There were very few days where he didn't yell at me or our son, and he never used to yell before. I don't know what happened. He just went completely psycho somehow. It wasn't just his behavior either. He started shaving his head and face to make himself completely bald. It happened out of the blue, too. One day, he had a full head of hair and a beard, and the next day, he was totally hairless. I didn't know what had gotten into him. At first, I just thought it was some bizarre midlife crisis, and he would eventually snap out of it. But he just kept getting worse. He acted like a lunatic more and more each day. I never knew what was going to happen next with him. One minute he would be calm, and then the next minute he'd be flying off the handle, or acting so immature that I would almost forget that he was in his 40s. My son and I actually became scared of him. After it had been going on for a while, I began to want a divorce. He just wasn't the man that I'd married anymore. The problem was that I was too scared to tell him, because I thought he would snap. If even little things could make him go into a rage, then I didn't want to find out what asking for a divorce would do. Still, I don't think that you could really say that we were married by that point. I avoided him as much as possible, and barely even spoke to him unless I had to. I even started sleeping in my son's room so that I wouldn't have to share a bed with the freak. Plus, I was afraid that my husband might hurt our son when he was on one of his rampages. Living with him made every day a nightmare. Not only was he angry and unreasonable, but he was also just creepy as hell. The way he shaved his head made him look like a different person, and he was always passive-aggressive in the most horrifying way. Sometimes he would come out of nowhere and start petting me or my son's head. Then he would say things like, "I'm not gonna hurt you. I wouldn't do that." Then he would smile like a creep afterwards and stare at us until we were able to get away. It was the most uncomfortable and disturbing thing ever. Every once in a while, I would actually lose it myself on him. I would tell him to screw off and leave us alone. Or I would just take our son and leave for the day without telling him. I didn't do it too often, because whenever I did, my husband would snap and throw a huge fit that I would have to deal with later. He really had gone completely haywire. Then one night, I finally decided that I'd had enough. It was extremely late, and my son and I had to be up early the next day for work and school. We were both sound asleep when we were suddenly awakened by incredibly loud noises coming from downstairs. We could hear my husband laughing like a maniac and banging a bunch of stuff around. At first, I was just going to ignore it, like I'd been ignoring everything else that my husband did. But then I decided that it couldn't go on. I was so tired of ignoring it. I got out of bed and headed downstairs to confront my husband. My son followed behind me. When we got downstairs, we found my husband standing in the dining room, banging on the table and laughing like a psycho. He had obviously completely lost his mind.
What the hell are you doing? It's the middle of the night!
He stopped what he was doing and turned around as I yelled at him. I noticed then that he had some hair growing out of his head again. It was really messy and made him look even...
Wait, I got something to say. Horror Party, please don't copyright strike me. I'm just a little boy. See, I'm just a little boy. Don't copyright strike me. I'm just trying to do it. Don't copyright strike me.
Wait, it's done.